is still zero. Now, if that's the case, then Thomas Aquinas has used the principle of non-contradiction to actually show that what he called an infinitely essentially subordinated series, that an infinite essentially subordinated series is zero. It amounts to nothing. It amounts to no existence. For that reason, said St. Thomas, you need an uncaused cause. Now we go to section 2 of the proof. If you have to have at least one uncaused cause in order to have some existence on its own, in order to get the rest of the series of causes going, if you need at least one uncaused cause, then you have to think to yourself, what a peculiar thing that is, an uncaused cause. And that's exactly what St. Thomas said. What a peculiar thought. Something which is in need of nothing in order to exist. And he said, what could that be? And the first thing he said is, well, an uncaused cause, it just couldn't be something like, well, it couldn't be causa sui, that is to say, something which causes itself. You never want to get into that problem, because if you're going to say that something caused itself, then you're going to have to say that it was there before it was there in order to cause itself to be, i.e., a contradiction. Every cause of itself is a contradiction because it would have to be before it was in order to make itself be. So it would have to cause itself to be while it was nothing. And nothing can't cause anything. Nothing is just nothing. So the key thing to remember is, well, you can't say that this uncaused cause was a cause of itself. So St. Thomas began to wonder, well, what could it be? And then he began to see, well, that uncaused cause, that would have to be pure being. It would have to be something like pure existence. It would actually have to be something akin to, well, nothing but being. I mean, pure being. Pure, nothing other than existence. Pure existence. Now you say to yourself, well, what could that be, pure existence? And of course, St. Thomas wondered about that himself. And so let's try and probe the depths of this thing. He called it ipsum suum esse subsistens. What does that mean? It literally means existence itself subsisting of itself. Pure self-subsisting existence. Okay. Now, given that that's the fact, St. Thomas Aquinas, of course, says, well, what could pure self-subsisting existence be? He says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to start with what it's not. I'll tell you what pure existence or pure being or the pure act of existing or the pure act of being is not. It's not anything which has a finite way of acting. That's what he says. You see, pure being couldn't be like, well, the way of acting like an electron or the way of acting like a proton. Why would that be? Because those are finite ways of acting. Now, just take for a second, the way of acting like an electron. How do you know it's finite? Because it's not acting like a proton. It's only acting like an electron. Okay. Now, if that's the case, then we know that pure being, pure existing, couldn't just be existing in a particular way like electron or proton. It would have to be existing, as it were, in a state which is compatible with all ways of existing. Because pure existence, the uncaused cause, would have to literally ground. That is to say, it'd have to be compatible with, it would have to cause to exist every single way of existing that could be. Now, if you take a look at that for just a second, that means that pure existence couldn't be, well, an electron. Well, why is that? Because pure existence would also have to make, well, protons to exist. And if protons, it couldn't just be protonness or the way of acting like a proton, because that's just one finite way of existence. It has to make electrons exist, and neutrons exist, and gravitons exist, and all other kinds of particles exist. And so we see then that pure existence, strange animal as it is, that pure existence would have to be something which would literally be, as it were, something non-finite. not restricted to a way, something which would be, as it were, compatible with all ways of existing, because it would have to ground all ways of existing. Well, what's that? Don't get any finite or boundary thought in your mind. Literally, get no boundary thought in your mind. Just take that entity for just a second. Just like, okay, it's pure being. It's pure acting power. It's pure existence. It's like acting power itself. It's like existence itself, without any way attached to it, without any finitude or boundary attached to it, right? Because it has to be compatible with them all. So just get in a way, something in your mind there. Don't. Because if you got it in your mind, you just lost it. You just got something finite in your mind. So the best thing you can do is just say, okay, it's an unvisualizable, unimaginable, non-finite, non-restricted, non-boundaried, pure power. Just pure acting power. That's all it is. And I can't conjure an image of it. Because the minute I conjure an image of it, I conjure a way. And if I conjure a way, that's not it. Because existence is compatible with all ways, not just a way, which can contradict another way. Now, says Aquinas, it's not St. Thomas Aquinas, if you can get that, if you can get for just a moment, whoa, this thing is actually compatible with everything. It is a pure acting power. I can't visualize it. It doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't have anything other than its boundaries in itself, its power in itself. If I just take that for just a second, okay, that's what an uncaused cause is. And of course, I know from the first step of the argument that I have to have an uncaused cause. Now, says St. Thomas, if I have to have at least one of them, and at least one of them is an unrestricted, pure acting power, just pure acting power itself, pure being itself, ipsum suum esse subsistens itself. If that's, I've got to have at least one, says St. Thomas, I can only have one. There can only be one pure acting power. And why is that? Because any time I would want to give any more definition than that to the acting power, then of course I'd have to bring in a distinction. Just think for a second. I am going to, let's suppose we have two pure acting powers. You see, something would have to distinguish the one from the other. I mean, one of them would have to be somewhere or have something or be something that the other one wasn't. If I had two of them, right? Let's suppose there's no difference at all. Let's suppose there's no difference as to way of acting. There's no difference as to location. There's no difference as to quality or characteristic. Let's just say for a second that there's absolutely no difference. Then the two things are the self-same. If there's no difference, they're the self-same. If they're the self-same, how many of them are there? One. That's what the definition of one is. Self-same. So there's got to be a difference. Now think of this for just a moment. You've got pure acting power, and now you're going to make a difference between pure acting power number one and pure acting power number two. The minute you try to establish a difference, any kind of a difference, I don't care what it is. Let's suppose it's a difference as to location. Let's suppose it's a difference as to space-time point. Let's suppose it's a difference of any kind whatsoever. The moment you try to establish a difference between the one and the other, a difference as to a way of acting, what are you doing? You are literally restricting its existence. You're literally restricting it to a particular place so that the other one is in a place that this one isn't. Or you're restricting it as to a kind of acting. So this one's acting like an electron, but the other one's acting like a proton. But remember, you can't do that. You cannot restrict the pure acting power. You can't restrict that to a particular place. You can't restrict that to a particular way of acting, because if you did, then it wouldn't be pure acting power. It would just be acting power in a particular finite way, which is not going to be compatible with all kinds of acting powers. So the key thing to remember then is, You can only have one of them.